Hello friends and welcome to another Crochet and Crime. My name is Hazy Baby and I'm playing a little bit of catch up. You can tell because my nails look like absolute trash. But today is the 30th of April 2023 and it's Sunday. I don't normally upload on a Sunday. But today I've decided to upload since I was so far behind yesterday with my Crochet and Crime channel. I'm doing Fraud Friday, but on a Sunday. Dun, dun, dun. And I'm going with this week's theme, which is females. So I'm working on my newest client's blanket. This is the very start. Yesterday I had to undo the whole thing because I disliked it immensely. So today we shall start again. And let's start with a WA woman who's been accused of stealing $330,000 in superannuation. So let us have a little bit of a look-see at her. So a 35-year-old Western Australian woman was charged last year with allegedly submitting multiple false claims to gain early access to her superannuation fund. So I'd say this is due to the COVID outbreak when they allowed people to withdraw on their own super funds. So I'd say that's what she's done. So she got access to $330,000 of her own money. Okay, so she didn't steal it from anyone else, which is nice. And she now faces 31 counts of fraud. Following an ongoing inquiry by the AFP, so the Australian Federal Police. So as part of the Serious Financial Crime Task Force, or what I like to call So Fucked, which is because it matches, and that's what they're called. See what I did there? Alright, so 2 and then 3 and then 1 into here. It's gonna be so pretty. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna go 1 in between each of them. So the High Welcome woman was accused of submitting several false claims of hardship from early 2019 on behalf of other people to access superannuation payments of up to $10,000 each. Okay, so it was stealing from other people. I stand corrected. So I'm just going to do 1 in between each of these. I've just decided. And I'm only going to make it a 4. Oof, this is tight. Sorry, hold on. It's so tight because this, first of all, is not my good hook, and second of all, this is a wool, 100% wool, and this is acrylic, so sometimes you've got to just be a little bit forceful. It doesn't have, acrylic has a little bit of give, wool does not have any give. Well, that was only 3, Hayley. You have 4. Alrighty, so the woman has faced Perth's Magistrate Court on the 23rd of April with charges that include 31 counts of intent to defraud or deceit, fraudulent means, inducing a person to act on behalf of another person in a lawful entitlement to abstain from doing contrary section 409. Anyway, it's a bunch of legal jargon, but basically she convinced a whole bunch of people to claim on their superannuation, and then she stole the money. So she sounds like a trooper, doesn't she? Okay, so the potential maximum penalty for these offences are 7 years of imprisonment, so it kind of doesn't seem worth it as far as I'm concerned. Come on, Betty, what are you doing? Crazy woman, crazy lady. Okay, so The charges replaced are the 4 initial offences of 2 counts of making false Commonwealth documents with the intention of the documents to be dishonest, including a third person to accept genuine. So that's like I said, convincing someone else. And 2 counts of knowingly use false government documents to dishonestly induce an employee from an organisation. So the criminal investigation by the AFP Task Force, IRIS, investigation was completed in partnership with the ATO. So back when they were allowing people access for hardship payments during COVID, I said to a friend of mine who was applying for it, it's not worth it. And the reason why I said it wasn't worth it is because this is exactly what I was afraid of. So I was afraid that there was going to be all of these people who applied for it, who didn't actually need it or require it, and therefore make everybody else look like the bad guys. And it wasn't worth it as far as I was concerned. But because really you should leave those $10,000 drawing on your own superannuation for actual hardship. So, if you don't have any money at all, and you need food, basically, was what they were doing it for, because people lost their jobs during the height of COVID and all of this jazz. Like non-essential workers lost their hours and whatnot, and people like, flight attendants and just so many people lost their jobs. So, but whenever we put a system like this in place, there's always going to be someone who comes along and defrauds it. Always, always, always. Anyway, so they're saying, the ATO and the AFP are saying, if you actually know anybody who's done this, they would like you to dob in your friends on the 1-800-123-400. Yeah, don't do that. That's a bit of a jerk move. But hopefully karma will get them eventually. Oh, I really like this stitch, eh? Okay, so I am going to move on to the next one. Okay, so this next one for Fraud Friday, but on a Sunday, is about a daughter of a former ATO deputy, so Australian Tax Office, deputy commissioner. She's been found guilty over her role in a massive tax fraud. So Lauren Ann Crayston was arrested in 2017 along with several others, including her brother Adam, and was found guilty last week. So the daughter of the former deputy commissioner of the tax office, I know that was a bit of a mouthful. It's a bit like, your mum's mum would be mum's friend. But anyway, she's the daughter of a tax office person, basically. The commissioner, actually, not just a person. The commissioner of the tax office. Oh my God, this wool is so difficult to pull through. Damn, girl. She gonna be some tight stitches. Anyway, so Lauren was found guilty. She was found guilty. It's kind of like guilty, but, a little bit more tinny. She was found guilty. Jesus. Of conspiring to cause a loss to the Commonwealth and conspiring to deal with the proceedings of a crime worth more than $1 million for her role in the platypus payroll scandal. Platypus payroll scandal. Huh. I need to look up what that was. So she was arrested along with her brother Adam and several others in 2017. Following a New South Wales Supreme Court trial which began in April of 2022, the jury sent to deliberate on their verdict in mid-January. They returned with a guilty verdict on Monday afternoon, which was awesome. They found her guilty of trying to defraud the government and the people. Croston will remain on bail until an application for her detention on next Tuesday. 3 other co-accused were found guilty this week. The jury is still considering the verdict on the 4th. Jurors in a lengthy trial were told that the Platypus Financial Services Group withheld tax from the taxation office using a number of their secondary companies. So basically they were funneling their tax money through companies that were not doing very well, and so therefore they didn't have to pay as much tax on. But apparently that's what they did it. So the fraudulent money obtained lavish lifestyles, including fast cars, planes, and real estate. I know, right? So the jury was told that Croston whose only other professional experiences was working at a supermarket. Hey, nothing wrong with working at a supermarket. Excuse you. There's lots of smart people at supermarkets. I've worked in supermarkets. I've met heaps of smart people. I mean, I've met some pretty dumb people too, but like mostly people I've talked with and interacted with were quite intelligent. So don't you be dissing us supermarket workers. I mean, I'm not a supermarket worker anymore, but I was. Okay, now that I've gone off on that tangent, I'll go back to what I was talking about. So she once fought with her older brother about purchasing a Hyundai that she wanted because he wanted to buy her a Porsche, but she just wanted a Hyundai. Adam Croston would use his father, Michael, as the deputy commissioner of the ATO at the time to find where the tax office knew about their scheme, the jury heard. So he actually used his father to see if the tax office knew about the scheme. Like, hey, Dad, can you give us a DL? Do they know? Do they know that we're ripping fucking cunts off left, right, and centre? Excuse me for my language. Anyway, but the dad was not convicted of or accused of any wrongdoing. I think he must have been the one who probably dobbed in his own kids, which I would have too, because that's just stupid. And it's also bad parenting if your kids think they can get away with this crud. Anyway, moving right along. So the 5 accused denied their guilt, and variously pointing blame at each other, like, oh, she didn't, no, he didn't, no, they did it, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, saying that they thought the company Platypus, which was named under the Greek god of abundance and wealth. I just realised it's not platypus because I'm dyslexic. It's called poultice. Well done, Hailey Bailey. I was like, I haven't heard of the platypus scheme. Because it's not. So, the poultice payroll case was a payroll scam that diverted payee withholding owed to the ATO. In this case, the operations of the scam took control of Poultice Payroll and its legitimate client base. So basically, they were at the very top, and then they had many subsidiaries underneath them, and they were taking the money that was put aside for the ATO and they were spending it for themselves. So it's not platypus, it's Poultice, which makes way more sense. Named after the Greek god of abundance and wealth, and was a legitimate enterprise until they ripped it off and used it for a scam. So, now that you are giggling in your seats about me, about my my little dyslexic brain reading that as a platypus scam, I want a platypus scam now. Let's bring back a platypus scam. Don't bring it back because it didn't exist, but bring a platypus scam so I can talk about it and don't feel so stupid about calling poultice platypus. Look, guys, okay? Now all of my high horse ranting about knowing intelligent people who work in supermarkets is null and void because I just said platypus instead of poultice. Anyway, moving on to number 3 of our fraudster women for this week. And this one is about Samantha Alporadi. I'm just going to call her Sam. But she's apparently Australia's notorious con artist. And she's been sentenced for child theft. So she wasn't just Australians. She was a fraudster au pair. So she was known under many names and created many identities. Emily Pelt, Lindsay Cohen, Dakita Johnson, Georgina McAlfrey, Harper Handerhitz, Harper Hart, were all of these names. I like how most of them weren't the same name. They were completely different names. Anyway, so they were just some of the names. She had many more, apparently. She was just one woman, however. She was the serial fraudster I'm going to call... What was her name again? I'm just going to give her a new name. Sam. Her name was Sam. I'll just keep her Sam. So she was 32 and she was from Sydney. And over the past decade, she has been caught under these assumed names in Ireland, Canada, and various states within Australia. So, like I said. So she was sentenced to 2 years in prison, having faked qualifications to get a job to be a live-in nanny taking the two small children across the state to Victoria without permission. So she pretty much kidnapped someone's kids. And that's the reason why she has been finally caught, because she was a kidnapper. And that shit's crazy. The bitch is crazy. She a crazy lady. Give me a second. I need to connect this bottom piece as I run out. In the past, she's posed as a victim of sex trafficking. She's claimed to be a Swedish royalty, a Russian gymnast whose whole family died in a murder-suicide incident. She's got some imagination. Throughout her 20s and early 30s, she reportedly pretended to be a young teenager, and with her slight figure, soft voice, and tendency to nervously chew her fingers, she often got away with it. So, bitch be out here just living several lives at once. For years, she's been running into trouble with authorities, obviously, because, she's just been doing her thing. And she's been deported from foreign countries such as Ireland and England. She's also been jailed for short periods of times. Yet, the saga seems never-ending. She just keeps, seemingly getting away with all this bullshit, which is just... I always think it's so phenomenal how these people have this ability. I don't even have the ability to fucking lie at all. Anyway. So, there was no monetary motivation for her actions, and doesn't appear that she was actively seeking fame. She just loved to bullshit. During the trial, the court heard that she'd been diagnosed with a severe personality disorder and a rare condition called logica, pretty much, fantasia, which pretty much means pretending to live in a different world, which manifests itself by compulsive lying. Care issues have delayed trial repeatedly because she's obviously a little bit not quite there. Her cheese has slid off its cracker, 100%. Some of these things that she's done are funny. Not funny, but they're comical. That's the word I was looking for. They're comical. Comical in that sort of tragedy and comedy kind of way. Anyway, so the first one I've got here is that she was a fake au pair. So she was a fake au pair in Victoria, involving a French couple who have decided to remain anonymous, which is fair. She told them that she was 18 years old, even though she's in her 30s, during a brief period of employment. She asked if she could take the children on a picnic, but instead of staying locally in Geelong, she took them to Bendigo, which is 200 kilometres away, for those of you who don't know. And for my American watchers, that's about 120 miles. Well, she was eventually spotted by a police detective. They eventually found her, thank goodness. The family was so not impressed, which you wouldn't be. Yeah, I don't think I would be impressed either. Just saying, if someone kidnapped my babies, especially since you're supposed to be an au pair and you're supposed to know, all the things that we know, that au pairs know. Anyway. So, she was dressed in a school uniform and even arranged for an unknown person to call the service pretending to be her father. So, racing to the screen of the fake heiress story. So, she pretended to be a fake heiress so that she could, get fame or whatever. So, she's been suspected as a con queen, and she was arrested in the UK and sent home. So, previously, she also spent almost a year working as a nanny for Ton Jarvis, an Australian professional basketball player, and his wife, Jessie, and an ex-lawyer turned into life coach. The couple said they found her through a web service for au pairs and trusted her at first. She moved into their house and relocated with them from Brisbane to Melbourne, but her stories started to unravel when the couple received reports of her using Mrs. Jarvis's identity to pretend to be a casting agent. She had befriended a 12-year-old girl, telling her that she could get her a job as a voiceover artist in a Pixar movie. She's just absolutely batshit crazy. Just so lonely, poor thing. Mrs. Jarvis said, I treated her like a daughter, saying she felt violated when she found out the truth. She knew she lied to me, and it just didn't make any sense. And I agree, it doesn't make any sense. I would be so devastated. Like, some of these lies are just so pointless, and they're not for anything except, I don't know, attention, I suppose. This poor girl, like, you have to feel really sorry for her, because imagine how deprived for attention she is, that she feels the need to make up these fictitious stories to get people to love her. Because that's what she's doing. She's making up these stories so people will love her, which is just, it's tragic and sad, and it makes me want to cry, and I just feel I want to hug her. I want to give her a big hug, and that's how these con artists get away with it, see? People like me feel sorry for them, take them in, think we can change them, but we can't, because they're absolutely batshit crazy. Jesus lit off their cracker. Anyway, moving on. The other thing she's done. So she was playing a mute in Dublin. So Irish police investigated, Detective David, I'm not even going to attempt that, I think it's Gallagher, also had a strange encounter with our good old Sam when she turned up in Dublin in October of 2013. He didn't know her name. No one did. And in the local media, she later became known as the GPO girl, because she had been found outside Dublin's General Post Office, which is often referred to by its initials. The Irish police force found her pacing backwards and forward and looking distressed, but refusing to speak. 2 officers took her to the hospital, and for weeks she didn't say a word, leading authorities to fear that she was a victim of human trafficking. Though she never told them her age, she indicated through hand signals that she was 14. Jesus, how terrible. Police investigators examined CCTV footage and carried out a door-to-door inquiries, and they worked with child welfare specialists to reach out for missing persons services, Interpol and Forensic Science Laboratory, and the Immigration Bureau. So they wasted a lot of money on this girl. And the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Unit, because they thought they had, like, a trafficked child. They didn't. Noticing the braces on her teeth had been recently fitted, they contacted a pterodactyl orthodontist across the country to see if they remembered her. Deputy Sergeant Gallagher said that there were also questions over her age, but never expected her to be entirely ungenuine. There was no end game, he told BBC. She was put in a children's hospital, she wasn't eating, she wasn't talking, it wasn't fun, she didn't have fun while she was there, like, it didn't make any sense to him, and it doesn't make any sense to me. So, like, you have to ask yourself, clearly the girl had some serious mental health problems, and still does. His investigative unit ended up seeking special permissions for a high court to share her picture during a public plea for information, as she was deemed a minor at the time, so they didn't want to put her face up, so they had to ask for special permissions, which you have to do in some countries. Definitely here in Australia, I know Ireland is one, and definitely I know America is another one where you have to get permission, but I'm not quite sure about other countries, but definitely those ones. So yeah, so they've wasted all this money and stuff. Anyway, needless to say that someone recognised her, a family contact that she'd been staying with at the start of her trip to Ireland. She was identified and put back on a flight to Australia and escorted by police, no doubt, because they would have been so freaking embarrassed. Imagine how embarrassing that would have been, to have this woman who's like conned all of you. So embarrassing. I would be so embarrassed. The police would just be so embarrassed. Anyway, when the truth about her situation and her age became known, it divided opinion within those who those managing the investigative team were like, some of them were like me, and they were saying things like, oh my God, I feel so sorry for her. Why would she make up these lies? Clearly something's wrong with her. And the others were like, how did she waste resources? So, also like me, I was thinking the same thing. How dare she waste resources. Anyway, she went under a mental health assessment when she came home, but she was deemed a level to be released back into society, I suppose. And since she wasn't really hurting anyone except herself, starving herself, muting for herself, wasting millions of dollars and, hundreds of thousands of dollars at least of taxpayers' money, but, whatever. You do you, boo. Whatever that is. And clearly, her do-boo is a bit weird. Anyway, let's move on to other things that she's done. Like I said, she's an endless font of amazingness in which we can discuss her craziness, because I love the fact that she's just absolutely so batshit crazy. I just met you. This is crazy. This bitch is crazy. Alrighty, so she invented a kidnapping in Calgary, which is in Canada. The following year, she turned up in Canada, apparently, with a similar story to her one in Ireland, playing the victim of abuse who had escaped her kidnapper. She was 26 at the time. So again, investigators and healthcare workers spent weeks on her case until someone discovered the Dublin story and made the connection. Oh, thank God. So they didn't waste too much time. I hope they shipped her back to Australia. Obviously they did. Otherwise I wouldn't be reading it. Kelly Campbell. So she was convicted of mischief charge in misleading Calgary police. So Kelly Campbell of the police child abuse unit said there was a considerable impact on a lot of professionals that were working the investigation, as they were led to believe that this was an actual occurrence and our concern was that there were victims that were out there, way more victims, and so they were super, super worried, which you would be. The Calgary Herald reported the documents submitted to the hearing showed that just 6 months after Sam was deported from Ireland, she went back to that country again, working as an au pair, after managing to get another passport from Australian authorities. I have no idea how she got another passport, considering, it's so difficult to get passports and working visas. And here she is, just whip up a new identity and head on over. Oh, anyway, crazy, 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 crazy woman. So she was deported from Canada yet again this time, and given an escort back to Australia and refused entry into Canada in any future endeavour. There have been countless other stories, though, as well, from a US backpacker where she pretended to be a girl named Emily Kramberger, and she told a Courier newspaper the woman that she was the au pair for told the newspaper that she was one of their au pairs that they had. Another occasion, she led a Perth family to believe that she was a Russian gymnast, whose entire family had died, apparently, according to this Sam chick, in a murder-suicide. Like, oh my God. In one of the most extraordinary incidences, she convinced social services in Sydney that she was a teen victim and managed to get enrolled in a school and put into a foster home. Yeah, you heard me. Into a foster home. Nice. I didn't hear about that. They must have been totally embarrassed by it. Okay, so in sentencing, she was wearing prison blue clothes, which they have, matching face masks because it's COVID, and her blonde hair piled up on her head in a bun, apparently, and she looked to the ground for her sentencing, played by a video link due to COVID restrictions. Melbourne had returned to COVID lockdown at the time, and she pled guilty. So she pled guilty, and they went to the defense of her mental health and all of that jazz. And that's basically it. The problem is that she is not suitable for prison, and I agree. Her lawyer claims, and the judge agrees as well. She's in danger in a regular prison, and she's not suitable for any kind of bail because she's a nuisance. So they're thinking, and we don't have very many institutionalized mental health facilities anymore, so hopefully they'll find a place for her. Hopefully they've found a solution, but they haven't said it on here. But basically, she's not going to regular prison, but she's not being let out either, so that's good. Hopefully they'll get her the help that she needs, because clearly she needs help. Because she cray. She crazy. This is really pretty. I hope that the person who's getting it's gonna love it. They will. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so my final one is Melissa Caddick. So I'm not sure if you guys know of her. She's pretty famous over here in Australia. If you pop on Netflix, you'll find a story about her. I think Underbelly did a version of her as a missing human or something. Anyway, so she's very interesting. So Melissa Caddick was convinced 72 investors to hand over $23 million to a sham business. So, good on her. Not. So basically the story goes something like this. Sydney businesswoman Melissa Caddick faked many documents in a quite elaborate fraud. So it's kind of a Ponzi scheme, basically. She used a swindling trusting investors. She told them that she was building their portfolios. They would hand money over to her. She would invest this money and give them great returns on paper. But really, she was buying herself Dior bags, dresses, cars, houses, keeping her hairdresser boyfriend in the money. She was a successful con woman, basically. She operated 37 bank accounts and sent investors fictitious portfolio investments evolutions and malicious reports to make it look like they were earning this great income. And because they were earning this great income, they were giving her accolades like, thank you so much, you've really helped me and my family. She defrauded so many of her family members and so many of her friends. It was ridiculous. So the Australian Securities Investments Commission, in a hearing, reported to trying to recover some of the millions of dollars that she misappropriated. So the 49-year-old then went missing. So ASIC, which is the Australian Securities Investment Commission, came after her. Like, they finally got all the evidence they needed to get together to prove that she was defrauding all of these people, this money. And they went in and they raided her house and they took away all of her computers and all of the assets in which they thought were, proceeds of crime, to try and prove that she was a criminal, basically, a fraudster. So they go in with a warrant and all that jazz, and they give her a court date and they tell her to show up, basically, to this court date. And she never shows. So they ring her hairdresser, boyfriend, husband, whatever, and ask him where she is, and he's all like, oh, I don't know. I haven't seen her since yesterday. So she went for a jog, because she goes for early morning jogs, and never returned home, is what he claimed had happened. So they were honestly peeved, and they executed their warrant on the November 2020 of her Sydney home. So more than 3 months later, the self-styled fashionable advisor decomposed foot washed up on a remote beach in southern New South Wales. Between October 2012 and November 2020, she convinced at least 72 investors to provide her with sham financial. So they gave her real money and she gave them sham financial advice. So it was just under $30.2 million in total. So she returned $8.5 million, but there was now a deficiency of assets and liabilities totaling $23.7 million. So existing clients extolled the virtues of her and would then refer other clients on. So that's how she would get clients. So, they would talk about how they had this really cool investment and then how this woman was helping them. And then they would be like, oh yeah, I want to do that too, because why wouldn't you want to do that too? So basically that's what was happening. And yeah, but she wasn't giving them any money. It was just all on paper to look good. I'm just deciding whether I want to turn this into a square yet, or if I want to go around one more time. I think I'll go around one more time. With a backward stitch. Anyway, so she claimed to be able to build up them a sizable portfolio, and then therefore she got herself a sizable and loyal client base. So basically she was stealing from Peter to pay Paul, but she wasn't paying anyone. She just made it look like she was paying people on paper. And if people asked for their money back, which 2 people did, she gave them their money back plus the interest that they so-called earned. So that was part of the $8.5 million that they were able to recover, was the money that she had given back to these people. So unfortunately, Mrs. Caddick was unable to run her financial business because it was all a facade. And she used someone else's number to get this. Anyway, it was a full elaborate fraud, and they still have no idea if she is dead. There's speculation that she cut her own foot off and made it look like she was dead, that she's living the high life with the other $23 million. I mean, I think that's just wishful thinking. I honestly think she just jumped off the cliffs in Sydney and ended her life because that's where her body, well, not her body, but her foot turned up. Everyone's like, oh yeah, but where's the rest of her body? I don't know. It was eaten. I mean, the only reason the foot showed up is because it showed up in a shoe. So, and it was decomposed and gross. But that is a terrible way to die. And yeah, I feel sorry for her victims, and I also feel sorry for her because, like I said, we should deal with the consequences of our actions, and she should have dealt with the consequences of her actions. But anyway, if you want to know more about Melissa Caddick, or whatever her real name is, I'm not sure if they used her real name on here, you can head over to Netflix, and there's a full documentary, like a mini-series. It's pretty cool. I mean, there's a whole like elaborate thing. It's not 100% accurate because obviously they're going to have to like fill in the gaps because she's not here to tell them what she did or why she did it. But she ripped off everybody, guys. She didn't just rip off Joe Blow and people she didn't know. She ripped off her nieces and her nephews and her best friend's nieces and nephews and her own parents. Like, she was not a nice person. She ripped off everybody. Everybody and anybody she could get money from, she ripped them off. Now, I will put the caveat in that at the start of her career, she was doing the right thing, but she wasn't able to make any money. So she decided, fuck that. And, well, it's speculated that she decided, fuck that, and then just decided to rip people off in like a Ponzi scheme, or a pyramid scheme, if you will. She was just taking money, putting it aside, and then just putting it in her own bank account, spending it all herself. So, yeah, I don't know how she lived with herself. Obviously she didn't. That's why she threw herself off of a cliff. I mean, speculatory. I have no idea what's going on with her. But I very much doubt that she chopped her own frickin' foot off to get away with millions of dollars. It would be there somewhere. Buried assets. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe in like 20 years' time, someone will dig it up. Be like, huh, that's where it is. Alrighty, maybe more parts of her will wash up on the beach. Anyway, that's it for today, and I thank you very much for your time today. Welcome to you, like I said, Fruad Friday, but on a Sunday. I hope you have a wonderful and magnificent day, and I shall see you guys tomorrow.